Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network, and I'm recording this video kind of late, but I just thought it was important, something I wanted to cover related to 5G that actually is not included in my upcoming documentary, The 5G Trojan Horse. I think it's an important point, but I guess you could say it's one of the things that made the cutting room floor, because the documentary was already an hour and 25 minutes long. And although it's an important detail, I didn't necessarily have the time to include it in the documentary. But we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Before we do that, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com. It's this website you're looking at right here. This is where you can follow me on all social media that we use, including minds.com, including steemit/dtube. You can join our Discord channel. There's quite a community there of people who talk and share articles and advice and things of that sort. You can also sign up for text updates on remind.com instead of waiting for YouTube to notify you, or relying on them, or Facebook. You can get a text every time I release a new video or new article. Finally, sign up for support at Patreon or Subscribestar. And of course, if you don't want to use YouTube, which I encourage you not to, you can follow my videos at BitChute as well. So what we're going to explore today is I guess you could call it the big telecom, big wireless media industrial complex. Let's say that, something like that. It's wireless and media meets each other, because in the last couple of years, last couple of months, I'd say, there's been this announcement of deals with two of the most well-known mainstream outlets, New York Times and Washington Post. Also, two of the most well-known outlets to have worked with the CIA, worked with the intelligence agencies, as we know, and we found out during the 60s and 70s, as part of the Church Committee. We found out that the Associated Press, Reuters, Washington Post, and the New York Times were working with intelligence agencies to spread misinformation, disinformation, and they surely continue to do that to this day. So these two bastions of truth and freedom decided that they were going to partner with the telecoms, the people who are behind the push for 5G, the so-called race to 5G. And let's check out this first one. This was back in when was this? This is April 2019. So yeah, last year. Exploring the future of 5G in journalism. New York Times launches a 5G journalism lab to see what's possible with 5G technology. This month, the fifth generation of wireless data networks made its debut in Chicago and Minneapolis, marking a big shift in wireless technology. Over the next few years, the transition to 5G will provide internet speeds at least 20 times faster, blah, 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 blah. At the New York Times, we're interested and learning how higher and faster bandwidth can unlock new ways for us to tell stories. To explore what kind of storytelling opportunities 5G might enable, this year we've launched a 5G journalism lab. We've partnered with Verizon, which is providing us early access to 5G networking and equipment for us to experiment. And the top highlight in this little article says, we believe 5G speed and lack of latency could spark a revolution in digital journalism in two key areas: how we gather news and how we deliver it. It goes on to tell them how they, are having early access to 5G via Verizon, and they're excited about all these potential opportunities and, what it could mean for the future of journalism. Then let's hop over here to the Washington Post, November. So this one with the New York Times was April. And then we go to November 2019. Washington Post and AT&T. So New York Times goes with Verizon, Washington Post goes with AT&T. Use 5G to explore the future of news. Today, Washington Post announced plans to work with AT&T to bring 5G technologies to the Washington Post newsroom and explore how the Post can use 5G in their coverage of the 2020 presidential election and other top news events around the country. The Washington Post and AT&T will also test new applications of 5G technologies that could define the future of news reporting. So both of them very much promoting it as if 5G is going to revolutionize and evolutionize the future of journalism by bringing in augmented reality and quicker uploads of data. And you have journalists and photojournalists and multimedia journalists in the field. They can use 5G to very quickly upload their files and get you news stories even quicker than ever and things like that, right? So, we have to question this. Washington Post, AT&T, New York Times, Verizon. Now, we could say this might potentially affect their reporting on 5G. For example, are they going to talk about the privacy concerns, health concerns, local power concerns? Are they going to talk about the lawsuits going on? I mean, these are Main Street outlets, right? These are some of the oldest news outlets in America. Aren't they going to do their job? But let's see. Let's go to CIA Google and search New York Times 5G. What pops up? First thing that isn't an ad from Verizon is an article from July 2019. The 5G health hazard that isn't. Then May 2019, your 5G phone won't hurt you, but Russia wants you to think it will. Yeah, the New York Times, after and both these articles came, again, the Verizon partnership with New York Times was announced in April 11th, 2019. Then we get May 12th, a month later, all of a sudden New York Times says, oh, 5G is not going to hurt you. Russia just wants you to think so. It's just a bunch of Russian propaganda. I'm sure that's no coincidence. Then 2 months later, again, 5G health hazard that isn't. And they go on. You can read these trash articles if you want to. They've already been debunked by Dr. Deborah Davis of the environmental, I can't remember. I go on a blank right here, but Dr. Deborah Davis, you guys look her up, you'll see her organization. I actually interviewed Theodore, I can't remember her name either, one of the directors of the organization about this. And she fully debunked it because they essentially claim that everybody's health concerns about 5G come from one study that was incorrect, and so that misinformed a whole generation of people, which is not true. When I tried to tell this to a local quote-unquote tech expert that works for the Houston Chronicle out here, he completely referenced the New York Times immediately and said, oh yeah, well, and recently in the New York Times, blah, blah, blah. It's just, and that's the purpose of it, right? So again, New York Times announces a partnership with Verizon in April. By May and then July, they're writing articles telling you that there's nothing to see here, nothing to worry about 5G. And let's look at the Washington Post. They announced in November that they are going to partner with AT&T to do similar things. Tech Dirt, which is a pretty good tech website, writes this funny headline: the Washington Post and AT&T team up to overhype 5G. So Tech Dirt has talked here and there about some of the health concerns, but more than anything, they're basically saying that 5G is not going to be as powerful as they're claiming, and it's just all hype from the telecoms and things like that. So, and you can we'll just read this little section here because this is a good part of the important piece of information as far as this whole 5G thing. It says, you'd hope that as they cement these relationships, both papers will point out things like the fact that wireless carriers are actively trying to make it harder to know where 5G really is, or the fact that AT&T has routinely used bogus phone icons to pretend modified 4G networks are actually 5G, or that thanks to the monopoly domination of the sector, Americans are going to pay an arm and a leg for 5G service, or how, thanks to the industry and their refusal to deploy fiber to more rural and less affluent parts of America, 5G will have scattered availability to the regions that need it most. So they're basically saying it's just overhyped, which I think is part of the whole puzzle. But also more than overhyped, it's dangerous. It's going to cause health problems. It's going to cause loss of privacy even further, things of that sort. So let's do the same thing. Let's search CIA, Google, Washington Post 5G. Do we see any of this talk of health concerns, privacy concerns, lawsuits? I mean, there are dozens and dozens of cities, counties, and states that are involved in lawsuits against the federal government trying to stop 5G right now. You would think that would be some mainstream news. I saw it over at Bloomberg Law. I saw it at some other more mainstream outlets, but not the two outlets that happen to partner with the telecom lobby. Imagine that. So when we search Washington Post and 5G, there is literally nothing that would even, you could even discern as being questioning of this. Just talking about 5G, who can get it? We're letting China win the race, the 5G race. It's time to catch up. There's that whole, and this is in December. So again, Washington Post announces a partnership in November with AT&T. A month later, they're writing articles saying that we need to speed up 5G because China's going to beat us there. And go to the Washington Post. Here's their 5G archive, and you can see. The only thing that they've posted recently, global 5G deal poses significant threat to weather forecast, experts warn. So that's the one thing that I wouldn't been able to find that they write about. The rest of it is just, Huawei and China, their 5G could be dangerous, but not America's. America's is completely different. There's no way they can spy on you. It's just the Chinese. Be afraid of the Chinese and the Russians. So we should be concerned about this fact. Again, this is some sort of new entering a new phase where it's not the military-industrial complex, it's not the non-profit industrial complex. This is the corporate media with connections to the intelligence agencies, the same media, New York Times and Washington Post, that helped sell you lies about the weapons of mass destruction and sell you lies about gas attacks in Syria, now partnering with Verizon and AT&T to push 5G, and they're claiming it's to help revolutionize journalism and yada yada yada. But the New York Times is putting out pieces saying that anybody who falls into this trap of questioning 5G is just falling for Russian propaganda. And other than talking about the weather, which is an important thing, there's no discussion from Washington Post about the fact that the people they've partnered with, AT&T, might be selling you a product that could make you sick, could remove the rest of the privacy you have left, whatever privacy you have left, and is going to strip local power away from cities and counties and states around the country. So just wanted to share that with you guys, and I hope you will share this video with others so they can understand, because I'm sure if any of you have gone on social media or had face-to-face conversations with people about 5G, then you probably ran into somebody who busted out this New York Times article and said, oh yeah, well, what do you think about this? Oh, what do you think about this? Oh, it just sounds like you're falling for some Russian propaganda. And so next time they say that, why don't you show them this video and show them the fact that these two outlets, mainstream outlets, are partnering with that same industry. And somebody needs to ask the New York Times journalists, the editors, and their team if they are going to speak about this conflict of interest. Don't hold your breath though, because you might be waiting for a while. Alright guys, we're going to leave it there. This has been the Conscious Resistance Network. Again, this is a network that you can join. You go over here to the side, top right, TCR Network. You can register, you can log in. We have our own social network there. Once you create an account, you can comment on videos and articles. You can message each other through that page. So if you don't want to use Messenger, you don't want to use some other website that's going to track you, try to use our website. We're trying to use less of these mainstream shitty social networks and maybe use some of our own platforms to communicate and get past this, because big wireless, big tech, there's an intersection between the wireless telecom lobby and Facebook and Amazon, Google, all of them. They're definitely a part of this technocratic state that is coming into view, and the only way we're going to stop it is if we question it. And unfortunately, we have a media that is a part of the problem too. So when you got big tech, big wireless, controlled media, controlled government, that's what I call the technocratic state, and the only way to stop it is to question it, challenge it, and also to recognize that we have the power to change our behaviors. We don't have to give in to everything that they offer us. We can choose to live differently. We can choose to develop practices and habits that are actually going to empower us rather than disempower us. Alright guys, until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, you are free. Peace.